see you guys in the dark.
I live in a managed complex that has two buildings, the main one with the lobby, mailroom, amenities, etc., and the secondary one, which I currently live in. On Sunday night, I had a DoorDash delivery dropped off. I always tell them they can drop off my orders at the secondary entrance in my building so that I don't have to cross over to the main building, but I don't think they ever read the note. No worries. I read the notification from DoorDash, and I saw it got delivered to the lobby in the main building around 11 p.m. I made my way over, and I noticed my dasher even left a note saying there was a suspicious man in the lobby and that he was worried he might take my food. I figured he said this because he was waiting until I got there. When I came down, there really was a guy sitting there on his phone but carefully watching my food. He saw me approaching and said, "You're here," to which I responded, "Thanks for waiting. Must be the DoorDasher." I picked up my order and started to turn around, and he also got up, except he started heading in the direction of the elevators, not the exit. He starts chatting. "I actually live in this building. My name is Saupat, and I live in building number. What's your name?" I give him a fake name and cut the conversation short, the pieces coming together in my mind. This wasn't the door dasher. It was the suspicious man pretending to be the door dasher and who had even waited for me to come down as though he made the delivery. To get back to my building, the secondary one, you can either use the elevators in the main building to the fourth floor and transfer to the secondary building, or you can cut across the garage in the main building to the second building. I noticed the key fob in his hand and waited for him to click the elevator and step inside. When I gathered he was taking the elevator and knew I definitely didn't want to share an elevator with him so that he would know where I lived, I decided I would take the shortcut through the garage. It's a straight line and maybe a approximately 2-minute walk to the other side. After he stepped in the elevator, I walked through both sets of doors and into the garage, my senses heightened. Halfway through, I decided to look behind me to verify I was alone, only to see his body in the doorway. He hadn't taken the elevator. He was following me. I booked it, heart racing through the garage doors. I started jamming the elevator buttons, hoping it would come quickly, but I could hear the elevator car was still on its way down. In a split second, I tried to think if I would be strong enough to hold down the door with the weight of my body if he came pushing through, but that would mean we would be stuck in this area in the garage with probably little to no cameras, witnesses, or any cell service. I was running out of time. I eyed the stairwell and, carrying my food, booked it 2 steps at a time up 2 floors. I was now on the 4th floor, which is normally the floor you would transfer on to get to the other building. Although I was now in the secondary building, my building, I was worried if he indeed was still following me, he'd know which building I lived in. I needed to go back to the main building. If he was still behind me, I would know for sure he was following me because we just did a circle. From the corner of my eye in the distance, I could see someone taking out their trash from the reflection of the door. At 11 p.m., this was the first person I'd seen, and I needed to be next to anyone. I cut through the courtyard, through the conservatory, and into the hallway of the 4th floor in the main building. Just as I stopped to catch my breath, he bursted through the conservatory doors and caught up to me, huffing and puffing. He accused me of stealing the DoorDash, yelling, got in my face, and told me I could be evicted and sent to prison. I couldn't look him in the eyes for longer than 3 seconds, but he looked bewildered. At this point, the person taking out their trash to the chute was nowhere to be seen, and this man kept coming closer, me backing up, him inching closer. I tried talking loudly, hoping if anything were to happen, the residents in the unit behind me could hear. He continued to raise his voice, claiming that the number 119 number on the receipt stapled outside the bag was the real person's apartment number and that I had stolen it from them. Taking a look, number 119 was in fact the order number, not the apartment number, but he was convinced it was someone's apartment unit number. For a lot of reasons, this logic didn't make sense. But this implied not that I needed to explain it to him, but I could have been trying to go from main building to second building to 4th floor to main building to second floor to lose him slash so that we didn't have to share the elevator and he'd know where I lived. Even if I was taking someone else's order, I wasn't. He was going to follow me to my apartment to verify where I lived, scary, and ensure my apartment matched the number he assumed was the apartment number on the bag. He was able to catch up to me relatively quickly, considering I was sprinting and out of breath. This means he was deliberately following slash chasing me down, which, as a man, circumstances aside, but especially for the rationale of stolen food, I'm not sure why you would ever willingly chase a woman by herself at night, knowing how this would look for him. He was studying my order slash receipt. because you had to be in close proximity to the receipt to see that the fading ink read number 119. It was never about the order, because why did he pretend to go on the elevator in the beginning, only to chase me across 2 buildings for an order he didn't even know what apartment number I was going into? And it definitely dawned on him that up until that point, we were the only people around. As I was standing there, him inching near me and poking the receipt, I thought I heard someone coming through the hallway in the distance. He clicked the elevator button, continuing his threats, and I didn't even wait for him to finish getting on the elevator. I sprinted through the conservatory, through the courtyard, and back to my building, taking the elevator up to my floor. I got to my apartment, paralyzed and shaking from what I thought was the end that night. I was so terrified that my breathing got labored and raspy. I don't even have asthma, but I could barely catch my breath for minutes, grasping onto anything I could so that I could feel grounded and not choke from the lack of air. I'll never forget the moment I looked back in that garage and saw his body in the door frame. I wrote a long, detailed email to my management with screenshots from the DoorDash and exact accounts and locations of where everything happened so that they could corroborate my account with their camera footage. It's now been 4 days and I'm awoken every morning by my heart racing, hot flashes, and paranoia with every drop of a sound. This is a new kind of anxiety I've never felt before, and my days are clouded with fear of bumping into him in common spaces, how to plan my days with the highest likelihood of avoiding him, and how to strategically order and pick up my mail where I can know I won't have to see him. I don't know if these extreme symptoms, especially the heart racing, are normal after this experience, considering I know a lot of women have had more frightening, violent encounters with strangers that involve more than what happened to me that night. But this has been consuming me for the past few days. I feel unsafe in my own building. Let's not meet. Ever. Edit. Everything that has happened since the next morning, my management and maintenance, 2 men, came knocking on my door. Of course, I was already frazzled from the events of the night before, and although I opened the door, they could see I was visibly shaking. They came to apologize about the events, saying they had seen the footage and it was scary. I needed to file a police report immediately. The property manager was kind, saying he would sit and call the police with me so that I wouldn't have to do it alone. I asked if they knew this resident and if they were aware. He said they knew who he was and that this wasn't the first time he had been reported for bothering a resident. My stomach sank. I quickly got ready and met the property manager downstairs, outside our building, but away from areas my property manager has known to seen him hanging near, and we made the call together. After I gave my account, the property manager chimed in with his accounts of what happened. I was the 4th or 5th female that he has harassed. He has harassed women in the complex before, but never followed them at night. The property manager has managed multiple properties before, but he has never seen a resident following another resident like this before. He usually finds a woman by herself and kind of hones in on them. He does not approach men, and he doesn't approach women when they are with men. The people who live on his floor have complained numerous times that he harasses them, making it bothersome for them. He's been arrested before for harassing a woman. He's been sent to the hospital before for his mental health issues. He was most recently booked and released 2 weeks ago, and management wasn't aware he was back. The responder on the other line noted this was quite severe, so they sent an officer on the scene to collect an official report. By this point, as we were talking, I learned the resident's full name, birthday, unit number that he lives in, when he moved in. It's been less than half a year, so assuming he has a 12-month lease, he still has a ways to go. The officer asked if I could remember if he had a tool or weapon in his hands, but I said I couldn't remember, not that I knew. I said there was camera footage, so couldn't we check and see if he did? But the officer said even if I couldn't remember, and it turns out the perpetrator did in fact have a weapon, I cannot go back on my word and say there was a weapon / I felt threatened. I was stunned. I told the officer, but there's evidence of him following me, a woman alone, as well as threatening me across 2 buildings, one of which he had no business being in at 11 p.m. at night. The officer asked if he used the words, "I will cull you" or "I will shut you." I said no, but he was still threatening me. The officer said unfortunately that qualifies as being a nuisance, but being a nuisance isn't against the law / grounds for arrest. My heart dropped. On top of that, my property manager said they've been trying to evict him, but there isn't enough evidence / eviction is a long process. There was nothing they could do. The officer gave me his card with my case number, informing me that I should call him if he ever approached me again or if I felt unsafe. I went back to my apartment, stunned and trying to figure out next steps. I decided not to leave my apartment again out of safety, but ordered additional self-defense items, including an apartment doorbell camera, Blink, because he had been up close to my receipt bag to know my order number. The receipt also had my name. I was worried he would put two and two together and type my name in the directory outside our building and figure out my unit number. I couldn't risk running into him again, so I had to stay locked up until my camera arrived. Given the information I had about him now, full name, birthday, and the fact that he has a prior record related to harassment, I decided to do my own research and find his public records. To my surprise, I learned that he actually has 6 court cases since 2018, and the most recent court record was from August 2024. His cases have been for stalking, harassment, restraining orders, multiple reissued anti-harassment protection orders, domestic violence, and attempting to get him to surrender his firearms, to which he has refused, so he still owns his guns. Different women have attempted to serve him protection orders multiple times, but failed either because he's tried to dodge it, never showed up to court, or he's been hard to get a hold of. I couldn't believe it. This man was able to freely move about common spaces in our complex, and management has never mentioned anything to residents, nor regarded our safety. Now I knew this was more than just an annoying neighbor, but rather someone who could be dangerous. I was dealing with a man with unresolved mental health issues, who may still be in possession of his multiple firearms, who is angry with me. Given his history of professional stalking, I was worried if he saw me too soon again, he would remember our encounter and fixate on me and possibly escalate. A few days passed and I hadn't left my building, but I noted that my camera had arrived, so I was trying to arrange for how I could go to the mailroom, which is in the building he lives in and the floor he's on. I asked management for footage of our encounter, and after 2 days of dragging on the request, it seemed like they were trying to buy time. They finally sent me clips of our encounters in different areas. In one of the videos, you could see he followed me into the garage a bit after I had already gone in, after he had supposedly pretended to take the elevator. In the clip that freaks me out the most, you could see me enter the garage elevator lobby, click the elevator button, frantically pace back and forth, and try leaning my body against the door before I realize I'm running out of time and run through the stairwell. A few moments later, you see him come in, look at the pressed elevator button, but no one took it. Then deduce I must have taken the stairwell before following suit. If anything, this showed intent. Oddly enough, the footage when he caught up to me and poked the receipt on my bag was missing, but management sent the footage after when I run back to my building. Anyway, a few days later, around 6 p.m., I was figuring out how to pick up my mail. I have a married friend who lives in his building 3 floors above and had no idea about any of this, so I asked if she would be comfortable meeting me on the 4th floor of her building, where the encounter took place, but where I have to pass in order to go to the mail room in the main lobby. Deep breaths. I got to the end of my hallway, my friend on the phone the whole time, and opened the door to the courtyard. Hyper-vigilantly, I looked across to the conservatory and saw a man there. I squinted. It couldn't be. It was indeed him, standing in the conservatory. He locked eyes with me, started mouthing things, smiling, then yelling. I began shaking, uncontrollably crying, and quickly ran back into my building. Now he knew for sure I lived in the 2nd building. My friend was in the hallway behind him, so she witnessed everything as he was yelling and directed at me. She wasn't with her husband either, but he had locked eyes with me and was angry now. There were some people in the hallway frantically asking if I was okay, but I couldn't speak. My friend, still on the line, told me to go back to my apartment and that she would meet me there with her husband. My friend and her husband came up a few moments later, staying with me as I frantically packed a go bag. We decided it wasn't safe for me to be alone in my apartment, so I reached out to another friend who lives elsewhere in this city and said I could crash at her place. My friend and her husband escorted me through the hallway, me physically breaking down as we neared the elevators, but eventually leading me to my other friend's car. As I write this edit, I'm in the living room of her apartment for the 3rd day, figuring out my next moves. On my first day at my friend's house, I wrote management an email again, explaining the incident with the resident again. This is my 2nd day and no response from them still. My friend went to management with her husband to report the incident since she also witnessed him yelling, so it could add to their complaints. She said management was aware of me and my complaints, but they cannot do anything because he is protected under the Fair Housing Act. Management cannot deny housing to someone due to their disability, which includes mental illness. For context, most buildings in my city have MFTE units, basically reduced rent apartments that are reserved as part of an affordable housing program in my city. From what I understand, people can qualify for MFTE housing based on income, and sometimes it's combined with disability protections, which is likely how he's able to stay here. So it seems my unit is worried if they evict him, he might be able to sue for discriminatory eviction. I don't have a male partner, which seems to be the only deterrent from the resident, so my sister and her husband are trying to figure out when they can fly in and help me pack my place so I can get out of here. I'm devastated because it's a beautiful complex with incredible amenities, gorgeous interior, and pretty new, but all this means nothing when my safety is at risk. I have no plans, but I cannot go back to my unit until I have protection at all times in that building. I am female and would like to tell you about an experience that I had with my dog at the time. English is not my mother language, so I apologize in advance for any mistakes. It's been about 11 years. It was autumn and night, and I decided to take a little walk around our housing estate with my dog Sunny. Sunny is a black and big Labrador mix. She is really good and cuddly, but she hates other female dogs. She also has a strong protective instinct and always snarls when she doesn't know or doesn't like someone or something. There were no streetlights inside the settlement. The only lighting was always at the house entrances. There was a small park with small playgrounds between the rows of houses, but, as already mentioned, everything was in complete darkness. That's why Sunny was not to be seen, only to be heard now and then when she was chasing a rabbit into the bushes. Then it goes without saying that she wasn't on the leash. I only need this when other female dogs are nearby. Sunny listens to my word and always comes when I call her. So while I strolled comfortably through the dark settlement and froze my ass, Sunny ran happily through the area and the bushes. I always only guessed where she was because I could not see her, only heard from time to time. At some point, I noticed a small shadow that was whizzing around me. When I looked more closely, I could see Sunny. She ran in large circles around me and the place where I was, and I thought she was chasing something. But the circles she drew grew smaller and smaller. She didn't make any noise, and I went on comfortably because I thought she was having her zoomies. At some point, I didn't see her anymore, but I went on knowing she would follow. Then I heard a sound, footsteps, but they weren't my own. I was startled because they were so close behind me so suddenly, so I turned around but couldn't see anything thanks to the darkness. I got nervous and called for Sunny because it could have been someone with a dog. Sunny didn't come and I easily panicked. She suddenly stood in front of me out of nowhere and began to growl as violently as she has never done before. My blood froze because it couldn't be a good thing. And then she started walking straight ahead, growling, about 2 or 3 meters, stopped, and at that moment I recognized a figure, completely in black. This person was shocked in front of Sunny and didn't move, and Sunny started barking like there was no tomorrow. The person slowly walked backwards towards the lighted house entrances, and then I saw Sunny bare teeth in front of a young man wearing a hooded sweater, and probably started to experience the same fears as I did when I noticed him, because as close as he had sneaked up on me, he couldn't have had any good in mind. Since it was too dark, however, he could not see Sunny, and she must have surprised him at the right moment. Sunny started to jump, and at that moment, the guy let out a scream, and you could hear something falling from his hand on the floor. He ran, and my dog followed. After I had released myself from my shocked stiffness, I called out to Sunny as loud as I could, until after a short time, she was standing in front of me again, wagging her tail. I took her on the leash, and then went to where the guy had dropped something, and indeed, there was an arm-thick branch on the floor that he certainly didn't have with him to throw sticks. At home, it gradually dawned on me that my Sunny did not have her zoomies when she circled me, but that she had long since noticed and kept an eye on this piece of shart to protect me. On the one hand, that was creepy, but also a relief. I was, and still am, so grateful for this great dog. This incident occurred back in late 2021. I was currently serving in the military, stationed in California, and I lived off base at this time. It was around 9 p.m. when I was driving home from work. I pulled into my apartment parking garage, and I noticed a guy I have never seen before, and knew he did not live here, just standing there leaning against one of the support columns, just staring through my windshield. I tried to gauge what his intentions were by giving the old Midwest, "Hey," by raising my fingers over my steering wheel. I got nothing, just a blank stare right at me. At this moment, I knew something wasn't right. I tried to weigh my options in my head. I can awkwardly back out of the very small parking garage and do a few laps around the neighborhood. I could call my roommate and tell him to come down. Strength in numbers, LOL. Or I can be a tough and brave military man, lol. I decided to stop overthinking it and just deal with it in my own. I backed into my parking space, all the while this guy is directly across from my parking spot, just staring at me. I again do the Midwest finger wave over the steering wheel with zero reaction from the guy. I grit my teeth and get out of my car and start walking towards the only staircase up to my apartment, which he is standing directly in front of. So I obviously have to walk right past him. I start approaching and say, "Hey, how's it going?" just to gauge his friendliness one more time, and got absolutely nothing. So at this point, I'm thinking I'm going to get either stabbed in the neck or shot in the back of the head when I pass him, but nothing happened. I realized I was just overthinking it and began walking up the stairs to my apartment. I get about a quarter of the way up when I hear running behind me. I started to run up the stairs, skipping a few steps and completely eat it, cutting my hands and bleeding. But at this point, I didn't care at all. I got up and kept going up the stairs and got to my door. This scene was honestly straight out of a horror movie, me trying to get my key in the door when I turn and see him running up the stairs. It honestly feels like it was all in slow motion. I thankfully got the key in and was able to get inside the house, but my motor skills were not all there at this point, so I was struggling to lock the door. I braced it with my foot while he tried getting, and I was able to lock it. He started messing with the door handle and banging on the door while I went and woke my roommate up. I grabbed my gun from bedroom, and we both just sat in the living room waiting. After about a minute of this, we decided to call 911, and in about 3 minutes, around 10 squad cars pulled up and searched the whole area. The guy was nowhere to be found. While finishing my contract in California, I was paranoid every time I went down to that garage. I still don't know what his intentions were to this day, and that's honestly the part that irks me the most.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.